Welcome to my channel. My name is Opubo. For those of you who are new to the channel, I bid you welcome. And for those returning, I bid you welcome back. Good to have you return. You are well appreciated. As always, in this channel, I present various ideas and designs of technologies, mostly from the Technology IP Bank of Enhanced Knowledge LLC, often integrated from several other technologies and made ready for adoption by the Adoption Brokerage Division. This presentation focuses on, again, still on conservation energy, but Sea-Salt-Extractive desalination technology. The idea is to provide endless and industrial scale freshwater for the needs of the conservation economy. So this presentation focuses on the provisioning of water as a foundational need for enabling the conservation economy from the technological perspective, and the approaches for the deployment of the technology by the people in a geographical space, be they a community, a region, or even a nation, to ensure the sustaining of a conservation economy. Of course, that water is essential is defined consequent on its need for sustenance of life, and hence the prevailing of a civilization which exists on human life. However, digressing for a moment to address a different need before delving deep into the water provisioning technology. If you have not as yet subscribed to the channel by simply clicking on the subscribe button below, I implore you to please do so. Click the subscribe button now. The subscription would cause the system to keep you apprised by notification of the next presentation the moment one is published, and also, of course, help me address my need to more consistently continue to elicit the peace dividend of conservation economy. Now, back to the presentation. By the medical observations of the prevailing civilization, and that's also equally supported by the existence lifestyle since the days of the cavemen, water is an essential need, being a need of life. Of course, water can be saline and it can be freshwater. Life subsists on freshwater mostly, although some salinity also is necessary in some circumstances. A preferred option is to have the freshwater in inexhaustible supply in geographical spaces. However, that is not always possible because of population changes, often increases in human population, and commensurate increase in the volume of consumption of the water. The freshwater, though, stored in aquifers may also dry up due to the changes of the weather conditions of that geographical space. For instance, it is said that the Sahara Desert was once a forest, yet now it is but a desert. And a freshwater aquifer may also be limited or severely depleted. One obvious option then is to drink water from saline water, which are vast in quantity, being the oceans and seas and rivers. The utilization of saline water, though, has been demanding in terms of the available technology to producing the large quantities needed both for consumption and for industrial technology processing. For instance, the AI, artificial intelligence system, is said to require large quantities of freshwater for system cooling. Admittedly, several approaches have been worked on and are still being worked on for removing the salt from saline water as to produce fresh water. Also, admittedly, some of these technologies work just fine, but the rate of processing the saline water needs to improve significantly to also meet the requirement of industrial processing. Moreover, specialty devices which are developed to effect the separation or desalination are not built of components that are at the commodity stage of product life cycle. Rationally then, it would be best to devise a means or mechanism that uses components at their commodity stages of the life cycle so that the cost would then be significantly lower. Besides, the approach to the processing of the water is not performed with concerted effort to also process the salt for some end product. Instead, the salt is considered a byproduct of the process and either discarded or just sold as sea salt to the general public for consumption. Then, of course, this attitude is also at variance with the fundamental tenets of the principles of conservation economy that requires no waste or byproducts. Accordingly, in order to be adaptable, the design of the water provisioning technology must be that is adopted must have a concerted view of performing the desalination and then the downstream processing of the salt separated out by components. Moreover, parts of the components of the technology are at the commodity stages and as such at the minimal off-the-shelf cost. One such design in the technology IP bank that was obtained from the technology integration efforts is the technology of this presentation, Sea-Salt-Extractive desalination technology, and is as shown in the image. The dual object of the technology gives the cost balances for processing the salt, hence the qualification of salt extractive with the goal of the desalination of water, and so motivates the downstream processing of the salt to help offset the overall cost. This offset is significant in making the technology financially viable on the large scale. Conceptually, the technology simply takes in saline solution at high volume flow rate and separates out the salt from the water, producing in effect fresh water for consumption. By design, the technology consists of 3 storage tanks, not shown. The desalination process equipment, which is the leftmost equipment in the image of the schematics. The downstream salt separation process, in essence, an ion separator, which is in the middle, which is the middle equipment and is in the middle, and magnesium sedimentation process, more specifically a deionization reactor, which is the rightmost process equipment. And as always though, also not shown, a controller system. The key technologies of technology IP bank adopted in the technology are each of the delineated process equipment, the desalination equipment, the ions separator, and the deionization reactor. During operation, seawater is suction pumped from the sea into a storage tank and subsequently pumped from that tank into the desalination process equipment, where the salt is force guided to form a narrow cylindrical sharp salt slurry. Now, on the picture, watching the picture or the image, you would see that in the leftmost image there is a Y-type flank arrangement, inverted Y-type flank arrangement, where one leg goes to the right, that is the salt stream, and the other one goes to the left, that is the water stream. So the water flows out of there into some water storage tank, while the salt slurry flows out of the other leg into and is guided to the ions separator. It is pushed now along from the interior of the desalination equipment by some hydrostatic pressure applied on the slurry, so that it comes out freely on this one as a slurry filter, while the water flows out through the other arm of the Y conduit as explained and gets pumped into the storage of another of the storage tank. The salt slurry effectively, a downstream, however, gets pumped into the salt separation processes, where the 2 main types of sea salt, magnesium sulfate, also commonly known as Epsom salt, and sodium chloride, commonly known as table salt, are separated. The salt separation process operates on size differences of the ion size and charge size. As at a terminal stage, the magnesium sulfate can be sold as the commodity product sea salt to the general public or to the microorganism cultivation industries in consideration of the critical role of magnesium in the glycolysis chain. However, portions of the Epsom salt solution may also be pumped into the magnesium sedimentation equipment and further processed to extract the magnesium ions from the mix of magnesium and sulfate ions. The option is guided here by the consideration for market participation in the supply of magnesium compounds to the fluorescent light manufacturing industry for the relatively higher value than simply selling Epsom salt. At this time, uniform acceptance seemed grounded that the primary object of essential water provisioning technology model for a conservation economy has been established, and the need has effectively been addressed and available for adoption in any technology used with conservation economy industries. The materials of construction, being mainly steel, and the equipment geometric forms being of cylinder and channels, the technology is well suited to be fabricated out of used process equipment discarded by previous process industry companies, such as in many regions, or readily transported to a target region. Hence, the technology enables the utilization of discarded metal parts in every region, allowing for the elimination of matter that would otherwise be branded waste. So, under the requirement of conservation economy, this technology holds its own weight. Now then, if interested in licensing this technology, please send an email to me. The email address is put in the pinned link below, as are other useful information. Regarding licensing consideration, there are some notes that should be of interest. The technology is not very variable. Each deployment must be designed to specifications because of the tightness and precision required of the science. The design is scalable with replication of the individual process units. The limitations come readily from the features of the process equipment. The salt separation process is fairly complex, though not very expensive. However, the magnesium sedimentation process has high capex as per design, but low operating expenses. The desalination equipment is both of high capex and high operating expenses, and must always be designed to production specifications. Of particular note with regards to some regions of the world, the situations of the provisioning of water and energy may seem circular or cyclic. Water is required in the solar boiler energy process to get energy, but energy is required to power the desalination process to produce water. However, such can be remedied by evolutionary development. Saline water is used in the solar boiler at operating inception. The superheated water, when flashed, separated, will certainly leave the salt in the water, which ordinarily gets accumulated and subsequently circulated back into the solar boiler. But in this case, the salt-laden water is instead pumped into the desalination technology, now powered by the energy module to produce as much fresh water by separating out the salt. Then, of course, the fresh water is pumped into the solar boiler, which still has some saline solution in operation, but with the result of lower relative salinity. This process continues until the salinity of the water flowing back into the solar boiler is severely degraded, resulting in an essential energy technology module operating with fresh water as per design specification, and an existential water technology model for supporting a conservation economy. Note, let me say thank you for being here, and I appreciate your coming to listen, and hope and expect that you would consider coming back for the rest of the future presentations of the technologies. The fact is, even if you do not care to adopt technologies, some might just change your perspective of society and life. Until the next presentation, I wish you be well.